I never thought my life would turn into a bad movie cliché, but here we are. I'm Liam, 19, and until a few months ago, I thought I had my life somewhat figured out. I had a part-time job at a bookstore, a decent social life, and plans to move out when I saved enough. But then my mother married James, and everything went to hell. James was one of those guys who could fool anyone on the surface. Charming, well-dressed, always knew the right thing to say. He met my mom at some corporate event, and before I knew it, they were married. At first, he just seemed like an over-enthusiastic stepdad trying too hard, but the cracks started showing fast. He had a weird obsession with controlling everything. The way I talked to my mom, the food in the house, even how late I stayed out. But what really stood out was how paranoid he was about my mom cheating on him. He'd hover whenever she was on the phone, ask creepy questions about her work trips, and even scroll through her social media like some private investigator. Then he set his sights on me. It started small little jabs at how I wasn't paying rent. "You're an adult now, Liam. Time to contribute." Then it escalated, unplugging the Wi-Fi when I was studying, throwing away my food, changing the locks. He even demanded $800 a month for rent or told me I could move to the basement. That basement was a glorified storage closet with no windows, a leak problem, and possibly a rat colony. I laughed, thinking it was some sick joke. James didn't laugh. He gave me 48 hours to decide, pay rent or move downstairs. I told my mom. She looked exhausted, like she wanted to believe me but also didn't want to start a fight. "Just try to get along with him," she said. I realized then I was on my own. I didn't realize how bad things could get until James made it his personal mission to drive me out. At first, it was just annoying. My laundry disappearing, the hot water in my bathroom mysteriously shutting off, my leftovers vanishing. Then it turned into something straight out of a psychological thriller. He removed my bedroom door handle so I couldn't close it properly, left passive-aggressive notes all over the house. "Rent is due, freeloaders aren't welcome, time to grow up, Liam." But the final straw? He threw out my books. Not just any books, the ones my dad left me before he passed away. The well-worn copy of The Hobbit we used to read together, the Harry Potter series he gave me when I turned 10. They were outside, drenched from the rain, pages torn and unreadable. I saw red. "Are you insane?" I yelled, shoving the ruined books in his face. James just smiled. That smug, condescending smile. "Spring cleaning, Liam. Maybe if you paid rent, you'd have storage rights." That night, I tried calling my mom, desperate for her to finally see what he was doing, but James had changed the Wi-Fi password again, and my data was barely enough for a text. When I finally got through, he stood right there, pretending to be the concerned parent. "He's being dramatic," James said smoothly, shaking his head. "You know how kids are, always looking for attention." I could hear the hesitation in my mom's voice. She wanted to believe me, but James had been poisoning her against me for months. Then one night, I came home from work, and the locks were changed. I knocked, no answer. I called James, sent me straight to voicemail. I stood outside in the rain for 3 hours, watching him watch TV through the window. That's when it hit me. I wasn't welcome here. I never had been. So I packed whatever I could into my car and drove off. I had no plan, no home, no backup, just an old Civic, $80 in my bank account, and the crushing realization that my own mother let this happen. When you think about being homeless, you imagine it as something that happens to other people, not to you. Not when you're 19 holding down a job, with a mother who should still have your back. But there I was, sitting in my car outside a Walmart parking lot, realizing I had nowhere to go. The first night was the worst. I had no idea where to park safely. I'd heard that Walmart allowed overnight parking, but apparently that didn't apply here. At 3:00 a.m., a security guard knocked on my window and told me to leave. I tried to act normal, like I was just resting before a long drive, but the way he looked at me, he knew. I ended up in a 24-hour gas station lot, watching people come and go, trying to pretend I was just another late-night traveler. I wrapped myself in an old hoodie, but the car was freezing. Every few minutes, I'd wake up to shift positions, my neck aching from the angle. By morning, I had a plan, a terrible one, but a plan nonetheless. Find a gym. $10 a month meant access to showers, which was better than washing up in gas station bathrooms. Rotate parking spots, library lots during the day, gym lots at night, places where people wouldn't question a parked car for too long. Keep working! My bookstore job was my only chance to save up for a place. I just had to look normal, like I wasn't spending my night sleeping in a Civic. The first week was pure hell. Ever tried getting ready for work in a gym bathroom? Imagine standing in front of a tiny sink while some guy with way too much cologne blasts music from his Bluetooth speaker next to you. Every morning was a battle between looking professional and not drawing attention. Then came the food problem. I couldn't keep anything fresh, so it was fast food or nothing. Dollar menu items became my life. Cold McChickens, gas station granola bars, and a questionable amount of instant ramen. It was disgusting, but it was cheap. And then the worst night happened. It was pouring rain, and I'd parked in a quiet back lot, thinking I'd get a full night's sleep. At 2 a.m., my car battery died. There I was, alone in the dark, trapped in a dead car, rain hammering on the roof like a damn horror movie soundtrack. My phone was at 4%, and I had no jumper cables. I called AAA, trying to sound casual. Hey, yeah, I was heading home from a friend's place, and my car won't start. The guy who showed up took one look at my backseat pillow, blanket, random fast food bags, and knew exactly what was up. Need a jump, huh? He said, pulling out the cables. Yeah, I muttered, avoiding his eyes. He didn't press, just worked in silence. But before he left, he handed me a business card. There's a shelter a few miles from here, he said. Just in case. I shoved the card in my glove compartment. I wasn't that desperate, at least. That's what I told myself. The people who stay versus the people who leave you learn a lot about people when you hit rock bottom. Some friends, they disappear. They send awkward texts like, wow, that sucks, hope things get better, and never reach out again. Others just ignore you entirely. But then there are the rare ones. Ryan, my best friend since high school, couldn't let me crash at his place because his parents were strict, but he did the next best thing. He snuck me food, let me use his Netflix password, and even kept my important stuff birth certificate. Some cash in his room so James wouldn't find it. And then there was Kyle. At first, I thought my stepbrother had completely bought into James's lies. We hadn't spoken since I left. But then one night, he texted me out of nowhere. Are you awake? I found something. At first, I thought it was a trap, some scheme from James to track me down. But then I saw the way he wrote it. Kyle was a serial over-texter, always throwing in emojis and exclamation points. This text short, no fluff, serious. I responded, yeah, what is it? What he sent next changed everything. It started with a picture. A small, crumpled-up piece of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. Then another, a hotel receipt dated from months ago. James has been hiding this in his gym bag, Kyle wrote. I stared at my screen. My heart was pounding. Whose number is that? I texted back. Kyle's next message nearly made me drop my phone. It's Jessica, his trainer. James spent months accusing my mom of cheating, treating me like garbage, calling me a liar, but all this time, he was the one having an affair. And, thanks to Kyle, I had proof. Game on! I stared at my phone, rereading Kyle's messages over and over, my brain struggling to process the reality in front of me. James, the same man who spent months accusing my mom of cheating, the same guy who ruined my life and turned everyone against me, had been screwing around behind her back this entire time. And now I had proof. A storm of emotions hit me at once. Rage, relief, vindication. But mostly, I just felt tired. I had spent weeks barely surviving sleeping in my car. showering in a gym, eating cold fast food in parking lots, all because of him. And now, the person who stole my home and my reputation was about to lose everything. But first, I had to be smart. James was manipulative as hell. If I confronted him without solid proof, he'd just flip the script like he always did. He'd twist the narrative, make me look like the bitter, vengeful stepkid. So I texted Kyle, "We need more. Can you find anything else?" His response came 2 minutes later. "Give me a few days. I'll get everything." The spy in his own house, I have to hand it to Kyle. When he commits to something, he goes all in. Over the next week, my stepbrother basically became a secret agent in his own house. While James was busy at training sessions, Kyle dug through everything: his gym bag, his desk, even the glove compartment of his car. And what he found? Gold! There were more hotel receipts, some dating back months, late-night texts filled with disgusting, cringeworthy gym-related innuendos. But the real jackpot? Jessica, his trainer, was married, and her husband had already been suspicious. Kyle, being the genius that he is, texted Jessica's number from a friend's phone, pretending to be a wrong number. Her husband was the one who responded, and after a little back and forth, Kyle found out he'd been suspecting Jessica for months, but never had real proof. Now we had everything, and it was time to end this. The setup, James had no idea what was coming. Kyle and I planned everything down to the last detail. If we wanted my mom to believe us, really believe us, we had to hit her with the cold, undeniable truth. The best way? In person, at her home, where James couldn't run. We picked a Tuesday night because James always had extra training sessions then. Mom would be home alone, the perfect time to sit her down and show her everything. I hadn't been inside that house since the night I got kicked out. Walking up that driveway felt surreal. My palms were sweaty. My stomach was in knots. Would she even listen to me? Or had James poisoned her against me completely? Kyle met me at the door, glancing over his shoulder like we were about to rob a bank. "You ready for this?" he whispered. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, let's do it." Mom was in the kitchen, drinking tea, looking exhausted. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Liam?" Her voice was soft, surprised. "What are you doing here?" I took a deep breath. "Mom," I said, "we need to talk about James." The bomb drops, we sat her down in the living room. Kyle pulled out his phone, opening the folder he had labeled "The Truth." He started with the hotel receipts, then the text messages, then the screenshot of Jessica's number, which, when dialed, rang through to her husband's phone. Mom didn't say a word at first. She just stared at the receipts in her hand, her face completely blank. Then she looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said he loved me." Something in my chest cracked at the way she said it, like she was realizing in real time that her entire marriage was built on lies. Kyle, shifting uncomfortably, cleared his throat. There's more." He pulled up his last message with Jessica's husband, the one where he confirmed that Jessica and James had been seeing each other for over a year. A year. I saw something change in my mom's eyes, a flicker of realization, of anger, of disgust. "He made me think I was the problem," she whispered. "He told me I was being paranoid." She turned to me then, and the guilt in her expression was unbearable. "Liam, But before she could finish, we heard the front door open. James was home. Checkmate. The second James stepped into the living room, he froze. His eyes flicked between me, Kyle, and my mom, like he could feel the air shifting, like he knew something was wrong. Then he saw the papers in Mom's hands, and for the first time since I met him, I saw fear in his face. Mom stood up, her voice deathly calm. "James," she said, "do you have anything you want to tell me?" He did what he always did, tried to lie his way out. "Babe, whatever Liam is saying, it's not true. He's just trying to." Kyle cut him off. "We have receipts," he said, holding up his phone. "Texts, hotel records, everything." James's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous." Mom shook her head. Then explain these, she said, tossing the hotel receipts onto the coffee table. James was trapped, and he knew it. His face twisted into something ugly, the smugness gone, replaced with pure, seething rage. "You little expletive," he snarled at me. "You just couldn't let me have this family, could you?" "Let you have it?" I laughed, standing up. "You stole it." James turned to Mom, switching tactics. "Baby, listen," she held up a hand. "Don't," she said. "It's over, James." And that's when the real meltdown began. James's entire personality shattered in real time. He went from denying everything to blaming me to begging Mom to work things out all within minutes. But she didn't fall for it. Not this time. "You accused me of cheating," she said, her voice trembling, "and all this time, you were the one sneaking around." James opened his mouth, closed it. He had nothing left to say. And then, Mom did something I never thought I'd see. She walked into the hallway, grabbed his suitcase, and tossed it at his feet. "Get out!" James's face turned red. "You can't just," I said. "Get out." Kyle and I stood there, watching as James grabbed his things, shoving whatever he could into his bag. When he reached the door, he turned back one last time. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Mom just stared at him, unblinking. "No," she said, "I won't." And with that, James was gone. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. For the first time in months, the house finally felt clean again. James was gone. For the first time in months, the house felt lighter, like someone had thrown open all the windows after a storm and let the fresh air rush in. But even as the door slammed shut behind him, the damage he had caused was still there, sitting in the silence, in the wreckage of everything he had tried to destroy. I should have felt triumphant, should have wanted to celebrate watching the man who stole my home, my reputation, and my family finally get what he deserved. Instead, I just felt exhausted. Mom sank onto the couch, her hands shaking as she stared at the hotel receipts still scattered across the coffee table. Kyle sat next to her, arms crossed, eyes still locked on the door like James might try to bust back in at any second. And me? I stood there, stuck in the weird limbo between wanting to say "I told you so" and knowing it wouldn't change anything. After a long silence, Mom looked up at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. She looked small, like a person realizing all at once that she had been living in a lie. "Liam," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." She had every reason to be. She let James poison her against me. She let him kick me out of my own home. And for months, she let herself believe the worst about me while the real liar was sleeping in her bed the whole time. I could have yelled, could have thrown every ounce of anger I had at her. Instead, I just sighed. "I know," I said, "because I did. Because part of me had been waiting for this moment. But now that it was here, revenge didn't seem so satisfying." Mom wiped her eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" I hesitated. Could I? I thought about the nights I spent in my car, the times I wanted to call her but didn't because I knew she wouldn't believe me. I thought about the humiliation of being locked out in the rain, of watching James twist the truth while she stood by and let it happen. Forgiveness wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be immediate. But looking at her now, I knew one thing for sure. She finally saw the truth. And that was enough. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'll try." She nodded, understanding. "That's all I can ask." Starting over after that night, things didn't magically go back to normal, but they got better. Mom filed for divorce immediately, and thanks to the prenup James tried so hard to get rid of, he walked away with nothing, not the house, not her money, not even his gym membership. Turns out his personal training career wasn't as profitable as he made it seem. And when word got out that he had been sleeping with a married client, his reputation tanked. Jessica's husband, he left her too. She tried to save face, but let's be real. No gym wants a trainer who ruins marriages. Last I heard, James was working at a strip mall supplement store, living in a tiny, overpriced apartment, and struggling to keep up with rent. Poetic justice at its finest. Rebuilding what he broke, Kyle moved in with his real dad full time. And honestly, he's like a whole different person now. Turns out, James had been manipulating him for years too, convincing him that if he didn't fall in line, he'd lose everything. Without that pressure, Kyle actually got to be a kid again. And us? We became brothers in the way we never were before. We still joke about it sometimes, how James tried so hard to turn us against each other, but in the end, he only made us closer. As for me, I got my room back, except now it actually felt like mine again. Mom helped me redo the whole thing. Fresh paint, new furniture, even a lock on the door my choice. She started therapy. So did I. We weren't perfect, but we were working on it. She offered to pay me back for everything I lost, but I told her I didn't want her money. What I wanted was to never let someone like James into our lives again. She promised, and this time, I believed her. James's meltdown, you'd think that after getting caught, after losing everything, James would just take his L and disappear. Nope. Instead, he started spiraling. I started getting these drunk 2 a.m. texts, rants about how I was a home-wrecking little expletive, how I had ruined his life, how he would make me regret it. I thought about blocking him, but honestly, watching him fall apart was too entertaining. The smug, manipulative jerk who thought he was untouchable, now reduced to angry. Misspelled messages from a prepaid phone. Kyle and I still laugh about it, sometimes the man who tried so hard to control everything, now powerless. I used to waste so much energy hating him. Now I just don't care. Moving forward, I don't think I'll ever forget what happened. The nights in my car, the feeling of being betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect me. But I'm not angry anymore, because in the end, James lost everything. And me? I got my life back. I got my family back, and I got something he never will: peace.